Good morning, friends, and welcome to my channel. My name is Crystal, and this is Homemaking on the Homestead, and today we are going to talk about love, marriage, and I am going to just share a little bit about this topic because today my husband and I are celebrating our 38th wedding anniversary. I had this great idea for a video. You know, my husband and I would sit down together and we would talk about what makes a marriage go the distance and what are some of the most important tips we would give, to people. And unfortunately, my husband, he was like, oh my gosh, that would stress me out. He just doesn't feel comfortable in front of the camera, talking like that. So it's like, okay. I can deal with that. Yeah, you don't need to do that. But it was fun because as I was talking about that, he and I were just discussing our 38 years of marriage and what would be some of those things that we would say. And, I had to kind of just stop and reflect on the differences between men and women and the things that a man will say versus the things that a woman will say when it comes to marriage. Anyway, it was all very interesting, and I'm going to just share a little bit about that with you. Obviously, the number one thing that holds marriage together is your relationship to God and your relationship to Christ and Him being the head of your marriage. And I think that is obviously number one. And beyond that, I find it actually really difficult to give anybody advice or tips or things like that. Because marriage can just be so different and people are different. Spouses are, everybody's individuals and there can be so much involved in a marriage. There can be, wonderful times. There can be difficult times, times you argue, times you have differences of opinion, times you come back together. Ultimately, of course, it takes two people that want to make that work regardless. I don't know. I think it in some ways, it was an advantage that my husband and I married so young. We basically grew up together. That obviously is not necessarily something I see typically out when I look out and around in society. Usually younger marriages don't have a very good track record of surviving. And, but for our case, we learned how to work together and how to grow together. One of my husband's first comments when I started asking him about things like that, and he said, well, you need to find your best friend. And I loved that because that is definitely something I can say that my husband is my best friend. And I am his best friend. I have friends that, lady friends that are very near and dear to my heart. And I love them completely like they were my own sisters. But no matter what, at the end of the day, my husband is my best friend. Over the years, as our anniversary has come around, I was a blogger for many years, and I would think, okay, what could I write on, this year on marriage and love and all these things. And then my mind would come to a blank because, like I said earlier, there's so many intricacies on the way men and women operate, and I didn't know exactly what direction to go. And so oftentimes I didn't do anything, or I would just say, hey, it's our anniversary today, that kind of thing. Most definitely marriage requires love. But even that, what does that mean? To some people, it's, especially women, it might be the warm romantic feelings. It might be the cards, it might be the gifts, it might be the flowers, it might be the special, dinners you go out to or something like that. But in reality, while those times are wonderful, much of the years of marriage, especially as I can say that after 38 years, are a lot of work and devotion. It is a lot of serving one another. And in that, I think we need to realize that is, marriage isn't a 50-50 situation. Marriage is a 100/100. You each have to give your very best to each other. Several years ago, I came across a book that literally changed my views tremendously, and my opinions tremendously, and just on the differences between men and women. And, after reading, actually it was two books, and after reading these two books, I realized that God created us to complement one another as husband and wife. He did not create these differences to create conflict and problems. So those books, the first one I read was called For Women Only by Shaunti Feldhahn, I believe was the author. I will certainly post a link below. So this woman interviewed in person and sent out interviews to women through churches and Bible studies and things like that. I can't remember in the book how many women she interviewed, but it was a lot. And then years later, her and her husband did it, and their book is called For Men Only. But in the process of this, they would ask, what does love mean, and just all these questions that really would delve into the way that women think. And then they did it for the men. So the main question in the book For Men Only that grabbed my attention in relation to, besides all the other ways that men think differently than women, but the main one that came across to me was the question that they were asked: would you rather be respected or loved? So what was fascinating to me in that is that it confused men terribly. And the reason why these Christian men were confused is because in their mind, respect and love are the same thing. And what it really showed me by reading those two books is that we as women, and this is a generalization, and I know that there are many variations, so just remember it's a generalization as I say this, but we as women desire the love, the affection, the hug, the time spent to talk and visit, and we have the more of the emotional side of what we feel is love, and our husbands are more thinking of providing, of the day-to-day care, just the workings of life, and they don't always deal so much with the emotional side. So that got me to thinking of that there is really one set of scriptures in the Bible that speak the most to me on marriage, in light of what I learned from those things that I learned from reading those books. And I believe that two people who, it has to be both, two people who want to make it work can follow these, and I believe any marriage will survive. Okay, so I'm going to read the first verse to you. Ephesians 5:25. Husbands, love your wives just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for her. Okay, here's where the interesting part comes to, at least in my mind. A man feels that his position in his duty and the job that he does, he feels that respect for that is love. Having an understanding of how to love your wife is in a way that their wife feels that is very difficult for a man, and it can be, at least. Again, these are all generalizations. So I had to ask myself when I read that verse in light of this, well, what does that mean? What did Christ do for the church? He washed their feet. He healed the sick. And ultimately, he died for them. The Lord is asking men to love their wives in that way. And that requires effort on their part, because it is not necessarily how their brains think and how they operate, completely at least. And then the next verse is Ephesians 5:33. Nevertheless, let each one of you in particular so love his own wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. Oh my gosh, that has been such a controversial verse. Wives, respect your husbands. It has been portrayed in so many ways that are negative in our culture. You have the picture of the domineering husband, directing and leading and, saying how everything in life is going to be for his wife. And, that is that's the wives respect your husband type of approach that you hear so much. But let's look back again, as I said, respect and love is the same thing to a man. So in a sense, when you are respecting his job, you are respecting the work that he does for the sake of your marriage and for the sake of your home and family. When he feels that what he says is important and that the work he does is important to you, and he receives that respect from you as the wife, well then in his mind that is love. He's receiving love. And that, I believe, is also very difficult for women. So God was, I could see how the Lord was setting up this situation in these verses. A man has to step outside the box, in a sense, or outside where his brain is at, in order to show his wife love. And the wife has to do the same in order to show her husband love. And that's where the 100, 100% each of you work towards the good of your marriage, and understanding that these principles is what is going to bring you together. Now, I know that the intricacies of marriage and individuals is very broad. It's huge. And what I'm saying, it seems almost too simplistic to, well, what about this and what about that? And when he does this and when she does that. I understand that, but I think that is part of the growing process, and that's part of the marriage process. And I think how much we react and interact with each other as a couple on a daily basis has a lot to do with remembering those scripture verses. I think about the respect aspect of a husband to a husband, and I think there's often times that women feel that their husbands need to earn respect from them. They need, maybe they've made poor choices. Maybe they've done things that you don't agree with. This happens all the time, and in a woman's mind, because she doesn't equate respect with love, she is saying, well, when he earns that respect, when he stops making stupid choices, when he begins to, do something right, then he will earn my respect. But the scripture doesn't say that. And there are often times, as far as my husband is concerned, I can say, I am probably a difficult person to love. I might be cranky. I might be angry about something. I might be frustrated today. I might just be tired and not be conversational and not be the nicest person to be around. And he has to end up putting himself far out there to be able to love that person that he sees that day. However, I go back to those two scriptures because it doesn't say husbands love your wife if they are being lovely today. And it doesn't say wives respect your husband if he's doing something worthy of my respect today. I can't change anything about my husband's behavior towards me. I can't change anything in him about how he might view things. The one person that I do have control over is myself. And in a marriage, I can choose to be graceful. I can choose to give. I can choose to love, serve, and I can do all those things in an effort to show my husband love. I personally make it a point every day to really strive to show my husband respect, and show it to him in big ways, in small ways. Maybe I will bake his very favorite cookies today. Maybe I will, like I just did this morning. He had a couple pairs of pants that he just loves to wear, but the buttons had fallen off. I sewed those on for him. They're small acts, but in every day, in every way, I try to show my husband the respect that he deserves, because that is what the Bible has said, and to show him that I do love him. I think when we understand how men operate and how men think, oftentimes it can change how we are able to ultimately understand that the love that they are showing us is is actually love, that we maybe we're missing it. Look at all the small ways and the small things your husband may be doing, and that could be translated as his love for you. I definitely have seen in the last 38 years together that the more I focus on loving my husband and doing those things, serving him, and spending my time invested in him, the more he receives that and the more he gives back. And I believe that that is exactly what the scripture is. That's the ultimate goal of those scriptures. So like I said at the beginning, I'm definitely not any kind of a marriage counselor, and I feel totally inadequate to give marriage advice to anyone because I know every situation is different. But I just wanted to share, after 38 years of marriage, some of the thoughts that were going through my mind, and some of the things that I believe have made the difference in a long-lasting relationship. But everybody's life is different. So, and I understand, I've seen terrible situations, terrible marriage situations. I've seen, abuse of just power and control and different aspects of things that, adultery, and I know that those sins exist and that there are many reasons why marriages don't survive. And so what I say today is in no way a condemnation of anybody who has struggled through any kind of issues in marriage, but I just wanted to share things from my opinion, my perspective, and some of the things that I feel I've learned over the years. And maybe there's one bit of one little nugget of something in there that a younger married couple can take and can understand and maybe help their marriage out. I don't know, but that's my hope. Anyway, you guys, okay, I hope that you've enjoyed today's video, and I appreciate you all so much for being here. And by the way, if you have any marriage tips, marriage, advice, please put it down in the comments. I would love to hear your position. I would love to hear your viewpoint on this, and let's talk about it, Okay, I will see you guys all in my next video. Bye-bye.